Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Omega Republic Talks. The historical the historical significance of 9/11 is something that we should never forget, and we should always be able to remember those that sacrificed everything. At the moment, we will recap the moments, the minutes within the first hour that happened from when the planes left the airports to when the South Tower was attacked and ultimately destroyed. Okay.
It's Tuesday, September 11th of 2001. In the early morning hours at Logan International Airport in Boston, passengers board their individual flights prepared to head to LA.
At 7:59 a.m. Eastern Standard, American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, is airborne and headed for Los Angeles. The number of passengers on board is 76, not including the terrorists, and the crew is numbered at 11. Not long after, at 8:18 a.m., Flight 175, a Boeing 767, also headed for LA, is now airborne. Number of passengers is 51, and crew is 9, also not including the terrorists.
At 8:19 a.m., a phone call from flight attendant Betty Ong, located on Flight 11 to the local 9/11 services, reports 2 attendees being stabbed and passengers being maced by hijackers.
Soon after, at 8:20 a.m., the third plane, Flight 77 of American Airlines, a Boeing 757, departs from Washington Dulles, heading to LAX. 6 crew members and 53 passengers are on board, not including the terrorists.
At 8:43 a.m., the fourth and final plane of the morning, Flight 93, a Boeing 757, departs from Newark Liberty International Airport headed for San Francisco. 7 crew members and 33 passengers are on board, not including the terrorists.
These 4 flights are the key points of this day, forever marked in history as the 4 that never made it home and 1 that sacrificed everything to save others.
The few phone calls from these planes that made it to their respective families, loved ones, or emergency responders are now all we have as the last testimonies of those that were murdered by these terrorists.
At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Standard, Flight 11, while Betty Ong was still on the line with her 911 call, the line suddenly went silent. In New York, on the ground floor, in the street, a group of men and firefighters are hanging out on the street as an airliner flies unusually low overhead and passes by. The cinematographer, Jules Naudet, turns his head and his camera just in time to see the plane smash into the South Tower and erupt in a ball of flame. A lot of the younger generation know of this, but didn't get a chance to witness it. Myself, I was in high school at the time as a sophomore, and by the time that we were informed of anything going on, the second plane had already hit the second tower. By the time they had turned the televisions on and we could see smoke coming out of the towers. Not long after that, it was still first period of the morning. By second period, we had just learned the Pentagon had also been hit. During that time, we could hear talks of there being bombs located in the towers, but we all know now for a fact that the only bomb that was there, the only bombs that ever existed, was the airliners themselves being used as weapons. In the significance of it, during that time, of course, there had always been talks of terrorist attacks in other countries. And at the time, Americans saw no reason to fear it because, we're the biggest world power in the world. I mean, that's kind of redundant saying it like that, but we we felt indestructible. We felt at our peak. We wasn't that concerned about it. We were engaged in the Middle East, of course. We had already had troops sent out all over the place along the world, you know, keeping the peace, as it were. But at home, we didn't see any reason to really worry about it. We had hijackings before, but we didn't understand the gravity of it until we all saw that second plane in that footage hitting the second tower. By the time that the Pentagon had been attacked, there was already a full lockdown on all flights in the air. The only flight in the air left that was unaccounted for was Flight 93. A young man on Flight 93 reached out to his mother and let her know that they were going to storm the cabin and, they may not make it. It wasn't until later that we learned that Flight 93 crashes into an empty field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The people on those planes, I mean, you think about how many in total we lost, but Flight 93, what really tipped the scale in order for them to stop the plane was the fact that they had communication devices and calls and texts from other people, from their loved ones, that there had already been other attacks and that the people on Flight 93 had already made up their minds knowing that they're probably going to die. And in that moment, they knew that either they die at the hands of the terrorists taking other people's lives, or they sacrifice their own and stop it before it ever happens. Knowing that there is a chance that they could save the flight, but in the end, all four flights met their tragic end that day. I, being a sophomore in high school, even I didn't really fully understand the significance of it. I didn't really comprehend it until later. But as a turning point, since those attacks, airport security has tried to prevent something like this from ever happening again. And people will complain about it. People don't like it. But people just don't understand that we lost so many that day because of relaxed airport security, of things like knives and mace and weapons making it through to the point of pilots losing their lives and who knows how many on board before the planes crashed. Heavy, if our security had been any tighter that day, if security had been like it is today on if it had been that way on 9/11/2001, do you think history would have rewritten itself?
That is an interesting question, because I think at the end of the day, they would have found a way to get there. Like they would have. It's possible they would have said, "Hey, what do you have this razor blade? Why do you have this mace?" But they probably would have found some other way to get what they needed on, either be it like fake weapons or just more manpower to forcibly remove the pilots. It could have been different, but I can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm. I know that's a tough question to answer
Hmm.
because we're thinking 2001 logic and not 2025 logic.
Hmm.
Uh, if I mean, from the significance of that day, how would you say? I mean, do you feel any shape or form, connected to this incident?
Somewhat. I remember. So I was 7 when this went down. I had family living in Connecticut, and either that year or the year before, I remember being on like my uncle's boat and like looking out across the harbor to, and like and they're like, oh hey look, like there's New York, there's the Twin Towers, and like I remember seeing them over the skyline and like, oh, and then little did I know, however many years later, and now they're gone.
Did you ever have a chance to visit the memorial?
No, never been that way. I think the closest I was like Connecticut.
Okay. Thinking back on this, now if let's turn our attention more to, let's say, like, the design of the towers themselves and how they fell so fast. You feel like you could talk about that?
Uh, as to the speed, no. I mean, they collapse in the way that they're designed to collapse. Like, if you think about it, like people don't just build things willy-nilly. They build them with certain designs in mind. Like, okay, if this collapses, I want to think, okay, I want it to collapse in this specific way. And I mean, things are engineered in ways that make sense, and one of those ways is worst case scenarios. Um, Like you see people like building demolitions, everything collapses basically just straight downwards. It was the same case for the Twin Towers because they were designed. Um, Pretty much every building of that nature, like in that area, is going to be designed so that it is going to behave in a predictable manner in all cases, worst, best, etc.
Right. I mean, I know a lot of people want to argue that, there are some people today that believe there were bombs pre-planted in the towers,
Hmm.
and the planes were just, like a farce.
No, I mean I've seen videos debunking all kinds of conspiracies, 9/11 beyond. Yeah, no, I mean it was planes, planes impacting an object like that, causing that kind of a fire, um, and then the building collapsing in that manner, from the top down is going to look like that.
I mean, you think about the jet fuel. The jet fuel alone, I mean, heating up a building like that.
Hmm.
There's been all kinds of like deconstructing videos that actually show like when the plane hits the tower and how much damage it can do.
Hmm.
Also, welcome, Einir. Oh, I gotcha. Uh, you don't have to speak if you don't want to, but feel free to chime in whenever you want to. Um, so how much do you know about these planes in terms of like do you know like what their size is, their weight is?
I mean, generally, I mean they're just going off like the number of flight, like they're probably moderately sized. I mean, I'm not an expert in that manner.
Of course.
Um, yeah.
I'm just curious to see if
Hmm.
you knew anything about them, because I myself am not too aeronautical, I believe. I believe
Hmm.
that's the term for it. Uh,
I think that they were all either twin or quad engine airliners, probably equivalent to like a Airbus A320 of today. But yeah, I don't know the specific details of like size and whatnot.
yeah, I myself have never even been up in a plane.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
I tend to keep my feet on the ground.
Fair.
It's not that I don't enjoy watching them. I just don't feel it's never been necessary for me.
Hmm.
It's not like I see it as like, being in one of the those test flight, like old timey 1920 test flight videos where you see the plane collapse in on itself before it even takes off.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I've done plane travel. I've done bus. I've done. Did I say train already? Train. I honestly, train travel is superior to flight travel in every manner. Like modern security, you basically just walk onto the thing, you go through a metal detector. I would at any given chance take a train over a plane.
Hmm. Well, it's a little bit more difficult to guide a train into a building.
Yeah, a little.
I mean, I know that there have been other incidents involving trains, but we won't go into that. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I've been on a couple of trains in my lifetime, but never a plane. I have had an
Mhm.
opportunity to be in a plane, but I passed it up for the fact that I am a little chicken.
And as we know, chickens can't fly.
Mm-mm. They can hover for a minute. That's about it.
Mhm. Is any of that built upon 9/11? Like, was that a an element that dissuaded you from air travel, or have you always just not liked flying?
There was a time where I told myself it wasn't related, but I feel like deep down there is a small hint of it.
Hmm.
But like I said, when I looked up at those screens, that day when I'm in my intro to economy class. Well, actually, it was intro to accounting. It was my
Hmm.
accounting class in high school. I'm looking up at that screen and seeing these two buildings on fire. Barely know. I knew that they were the buildings in New York. Heck, I barely knew anything about New York at the time. Didn't really care for it. I'm just kind of a I'm a kind of a cloister, uh, if you will.
Hmm.
Uh, there's another word for it. I lived a very sheltered childhood, so I didn't have a lot of international knowledge. You could say.
Yeah, I get it.
I was like, those buildings are on fire, and I could kind of hear it where it says, uh, the eruption ball, the fire, and everything, and I'm pretty sure the reporters that were talking uh hardly said anything about planes crashing into the towers at the time. With the reports prior to the second plane, there had been talks of, a bomb going off, or it was just a like an office fire.
Hmm.
But the the cinematographer, which is Jules Naudet, credit goes to him. We actually had physical footage of the first plane hitting the South Tower.
Hmm. One of those like once in a lifetime shots, like Mount St. Helens erupting.
Yeah. This one event, I mean, it changed the course of American history. I mean,
Definitely.
uh, and there were a lot of seniors I remember that year that started there. I mean, you actually heard about people in in high school, seniors, saying they're going to enlist, they're going to go fight.
Oh yeah. No, I've met a few of those in my years in the Navy. Like yeah, like me, I enlisted after 9/11 because I mean it was almost like a modern Pearl Harbor, you could say. It awoke a sleeping giant of the United States from a decades-long slumber.
Hmm. It so it was more than just a call to arms. It was, you hurt my homeland, and now it's your turn.
Hmm.
Would you say that you saw a lot of that from your fellow brothers and sisters in arms?
I think, but by the time I was in, we were all a lot younger when 9/11 happened. I think it was there wasn't that much vindication in, I guess, my generation. At least not like, oorah, yeah, let's go kill some Arabs, um, Arabs. But
Hmm.
I think it like at least in my case, it was less people that were vindictive and more people that were like 9/11 was one of the reasons they joined, but it wasn't like a defining reason of why they joined. Like I was 7, so people that were yeah around 10 and below who when that went off were probably like in my age group area.
Hmm.
So like yeah, or late and early millennials, I believe.
Right. Yeah, because this would have led into like the 2010s era.
Hmm.
If Let's just say we back up the clock. If 9/11 hadn't even happened that day, let's just say all the terrorists had been caught at the gates
Hmm.
for some reason, like their plans were leaked, to the FBI. The FBI figured it out, and they managed to
Mhm.
capture all of them at the gate. 9/11 never happens. None of the planes crash, and all of the flights get to their destinations, and it loses all. 9/11 just is just another day.
Mhm.
What do you think would have happened?
I think that would depend on how it gets played up. Like if it gets hushed, like they just get sent to Jitmo and that's the end of it, then probably a significant diversion from where we are today, or there would have been just another attempt at it, um, and it would have just been on a different date. Um, Alternatively, if it was like blown up, like, oh, look at these guys, they tried to do this, like what could have happened? We might have had. I think it probably would have been a more temporary change in security. Like we would have had a temporary increase in, oh, everyone's very concerned about flying, and we've got TSA that's slightly more judicial in their processing, but it probably would have then gone down eventually, I imagine. I know one thing I can speak about from a military perspective is when you go onto a military base, you'll typically see a force protection protocol or FPCON. Pretty much every base is going to be on Bravo, which is the let's see, there's four. There's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. Bravo is the second one in the tier, with Delta being the highest tier. Like the base is basically shut down on Delta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we are never probably going to go back to a point in time where we have Alpha protocol, at least until well after I'm gone. Like it used to be like, oh, you could just wave your badge and get on base. No, these days, like you're showing your badge, they check almost everyone's badge, so they're scanning. Um, significantly tighter like control at the gates. Which is something you don't see in other countries. Like I was in Germany, 2023 for an exercise, and basically like we basically just drove onto and left base as we wanted to. Like I remember like basically the guards were just all smiley and wavy and like, oh hey,
Hmm.
Guten Tag, welcome back, and we would just drive on and basically not even show our IDs
ID.
and like
Yeah.
basically yeah, that's how it used to be. Where like things were a lot more relaxed because either we had gotten lax or we just didn't think it could happen. Like I remember going on an airplane and I had a bottle of water with me, and oh like these days like, oh no, TSA is gonna jump you and tase you if you have a bottle of water, but now they're like, oh hey, just take a drink from that, and I took a drink from it, like okay cool, you're good to go. Like yeah, I remember flying before 9/11 and it was drastically different from how it is today.
Yeah. And for those of you just tuning in, Heavy Mettaloid, he he was not directly, involved in any way of 9/11 itself. He was a little bit
No,
too
I was
young
7.
for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just to clarify, in case you're just now tuning in and you're hearing him talking about all these flights and whatnot. No, no, that's he, he's giving his perspective on how it changed things a little bit. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, but yeah, if well, let's change history a little bit. Let's just say, okay, so Flight 11 is is able to get airborne. The terrorists are on it, and to, they're able to crash their plane into the first tower. But all of the other three flights are compromised, and they never leave the airport.
I think we eventually would have realized what had happened, but I mean, I think as you noted, people were like, oh, like oh, was it a fire? Is it a bomb? Because I mean, you think about it, like a plane traveling at hundreds of miles an hour suddenly hits a building, like at that kind of speed, the plane essentially just vaporizes. Like it hits, it crumples. Basically, the building is like that entire level is just gone. That entire plane is basically just gone. It's up in a huge fireball. So it would have taken us significantly longer, I think, to realize someone flew a plane into this building. Like we would have had the on the ground photos, but in the absolute chaos on the ground, it probably would have taken us at least a few hours, if not a day, to realize exactly what had happened. Probably longer to understand, I guess, more of the nuance of, hey, this was a terrorist attack.
Mhm.
So the NTSB, FBI, and CIA would have all had to have been involved in the investigation. The NTSB gets on top of airplane crashes very, very quickly. The problem is because of all the debris, it would have been even harder to find the pieces of the plane to figure out, no, this was a terrorist attack than usual. So the Central Intelligence Agency and Federal Bureau of Investigation would have had to pick up the slack to figure out what led up to it based on reports of suspicious activity to get a rapid understanding of what happened, which I believe that is actually what happened. I think we figured it out within a few days that it was actually a terrorist attack.
Mhm.
Mhm. The one important thing there is that both the FBI and the CIA had tidbits of information that, had they shared with each other, may have resulted in a drastically different 9/11. Like a lot of them had, like
Right.
they knew what was going on, but because they weren't actually talking to each other, things went down the way they did. It was an absolute failure on the part of the intelligence community, just because they weren't collaborating as they and that is one thing you see today. Like there is drastically more collaboration in the IC today than there was, I think, ever.
Correct. There was lots of, I mean, it was a while later that we found out just how much information each agency actually had. But yes, that was the case. They hadn't shared enough of the information with each other to realize, hey, this is actually a threat.
Hmm.
So having just the first flight, if it had, if the first flight was the only successful one, and if, okay, hold on, let me back up a little bit what I'm saying here.
Hmm.
So let's just say the intelligence gets out, they finally collaborate, and they figure it out in time just before flight. Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. Before uh, flight 175, which is the second one. Right
Hmm.
before flight 175 is supposed to take off, they managed to halt all other flights on the ground. Flight 11 is, it's already too late for them. They're already inbound. They're hijacked and they hit the First World Trade Center. But all the other flights, the hijacking is compromised. They take all the hijackers into custody, but Flight 11 is still inbound to the First World Trade Center because of the communication of the CIA and the FBI and all the other intelligence agencies. So at the time, they already know that there is a massive hijacking taking place, but it's already too late because Flight 11 has already made contact with the First World Trade Center. So there is obviously, the time event of the South Tower is going to fall. But after all this is done, the South Tower falls, what would have changed, you think, in terms of our security matters?
I think the significant divergence would be in the fact that we no longer have footage of an aircraft striking a tower, because if only the first one hits, we don't have any good footage like that video of just the plane entering the building and just disappearing, basically. I think that's probably one of the cruxes or one of the tipping points that decides which way history falls. I think not having that video evidence is going to mean a lot. Maybe some level of decreased, I guess, follow-on Islamophobia or other, I guess, vitriol that you get from the United States. I think there will still be a significant amount. I think even with just one, a lot of what happened will still happen. It'll just be maybe less vitriol from the public. I think just because we don't have it playing on our video screens as much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm granted, I know I'm doing a lot of ifs here, and history. So in my mind, I think the tipping point would have been the second flight. If both trade centers had fallen, I think that history would have been just about the same. Granted, the Pentagon getting hit was a significant thing as well, but I think at the point when the second flight hits the North Tower, I think that's when it really hits home to a lot of people. My theory is that if it only had been the first flight, a lot of people would have speculated if it had happened or not. A lot of people would have speculated, was this a terrorist attack or was it just a pilot error? Was this just a hoax, a bomb being planted in the World Trade Center? Or, I mean, granted, there are still people that believe that, which if you do, you're idiots. I'm sorry. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. So you can say it was bombs planted, but no. It was without a doubt a terrorist attack where they used our own international flights against us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hog the entire talk time. So if you have feel free to interject at any point.
Mm-hmm. No, I think for me the more significant event just personally was when they got Osama. Like I remember like Obama coming on and saying, "Oh, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we got him." That famous line. And I think we bought a cake that night and celebrated ourselves because yeah.
The day they managed to finally get him, it was a good day.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when Americans were getting tired of wondering if we were going to get him or not, and then we finally heard the news and saw the footage, and that group of Army Rangers, I believe, that managed to
the SEALs. It was SEAL Team 6, I think, Red Squadron specifically.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, when they managed to finally, corner him. I believe he had it. I don't want to go into too many details for it's a bit disturbing, some of the stuff that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when they finally managed to get him, it was definitely a sigh of relief for the country. We knew the fight wasn't over, but the man that had orchestrated everything for the 9/11 attacks, as far as we knew, had finally been caught and, of course, later executed.
Mm-hmm. I had something I was going to say, and I'm having a brain fart.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I interjected a bit too soon on that.
No worries. CIA Museum, you probably won't be able to get there, but it does have his AK. Osama's AK is in the CIA Museum. I've seen it. It's cool.
Okay, now I'm going to throw another kind of history twist out there. What would have happened if Flight 93 hadn't been taken over by the passengers? All the other 3 planes have hit their targets, Pentagon and the 2 World Trade Centers, and Flight 93 is supposedly headed for Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from what we know about that day, there weren't a lot of scrambled jets in the air around Washington, D.C., and the jets that we knew about were not armed. They were going to have to be suicide jets. If Flight 93 had come within the airspace of Washington, D.C., that jet, that one Air Force jet that we know of,
I believe there were 2. I think there were either F-16s. I think there were F-16s, but
yes,
don't quote me on that.
right?
But yes, two unarmed F-16s.
Mm-hmm. They had been from what we know from the from what we know from history, is that they were scrambled so fast that they did not have time to load their missiles properly. I don't know the specifics on how they're loaded, but the pilots, one was a female, but I cannot remember her name. I was looking at it earlier and I've already forgotten it.
Mm-hmm.
She gave her testimony knowing that she was going to literally have to sacrifice herself for the country if this missing flight, Flight 93, which was no longer being detected on radar, came within Washington, D.C. airspace.
Mm-hmm.
What we've heard from the reports is that from the air, if you're in a Boeing 767 or whatever, you cannot spot the Capitol building. Or at least you can't spot the White House from the air because it is way too small. So that makes you wonder, what target would they have gone for that they would have seen? Would they have landed on the Pentagon again? Is the Capitol building big enough? What would they have been aiming for? Or would they have just gone for the biggest building they could have seen and said, Allah Akbar, and crashed into it, and then just said, we're doing this because we hate Americans? It's scary to think that if the people on that plane had not acted the way they did, and gave everything, knowing that if they don't do this, other people will die in the process. But let's just say this is just a theory. Let's just say they're cowering in fear, trying to keep themselves safe, thinking that all these other talks of planes crashing into buildings is a hoax, and these guys with the bomb are just going to land safely at the nearest airport. But they are able to get into Washington, D.C. airspace. What is a theory of what would happen?
I think the plan for the F-16s was to have them, essentially just try and force the aircraft down. I saw a video on this recently, actually. I think they said one of them was going to go for the tail section, and the other one, if that failed to bring it down, was going to go for the cockpit.
So, Flight 93, although would have made it into Washington, D.C. airspace, I am pretty confident that it would have been spotted at this point because they're already well aware of this flight. They would have already kept their eyes to the northwest, watching for a possible airliner coming into the airspace because everything else has been grounded. So they're watching the northwest. They're flying around the airspace, doing their, guarding formation, or whatever the terminology is. And they see the flight coming. And if you put yourself in that pilot's, cockpit, you see that flight coming. You know that you have no usable weapons on board. Knowing that you have to be the one to make that decision. If you see a possible way to guide that aircraft away, knowing that your plane, the jet that you're in, is probably, a fraction of the size of this Boeing 757. You have a decision to make. You have to knowingly stop this flight from crashing. But you also have to make sure that you do it to where innocent civilians aren't harmed. But because of the bravery of the people on Flight 93, the people in those jets, the ones that enlisted, didn't have to make those decisions. Because if they had, it's incredible to think what kind of situation that would have been, because it would have been terrifying. It's a situation that I can't even imagine, because I don't know if I could make that decision. Giving up my life to save others, but not knowing how to handle it. To stop this flight, to fly my plane into a bigger plane to stop it, but knowing that wherever I do it might harm others below me.
I think that's something that I think anyone in a because like we've heard tales of fighter jets having just issues, and I've got to eject now, but some people are like, okay, they eject carelessly, and yeah, it does get people killed. And then there are tales of others who they bring the aircraft down to the ground and thereby reduce the number of casualties theoretically. So I think that is definitely something that like every pilot probably thinks about.
There are way too many ifs on this subject, and I'm sorry I keep, trying to see into a history that doesn't exist. We have the history that we have at this point. The younger generation hopefully continues to keep aware and informed of these events, and I hope that they never happen again. So many have suffered that day, and to this day, there are still people who were in the midst of all of that have, trauma and physical injuries sustained during these events. And to this day, we still hear of deaths because of the debris inhalation. From when the towers fell, if you were that close and understood how much debris is flying in the air, and you have no way other than your shirt to cover your face, if for you younger people out there watching this, I hope that you can just grasp the full concept, and to have people make fun of this and not understand the significance of this
That's the thing
is
that bothers me the most.
you have these memes of people flying planes into buildings and referencing the towers getting hit. You just don't understand. I don't live in New York. I don't live anywhere near New York. And when I originally saw it on our, 10 by 10 TV screens in class, I didn't really understand it at first either. But if I can understand the concept of it, you younger kids need to understand the concept of it. Even if you never enlist, even if you never go into any kind of law enforcement, or you never become a pilot or anything, or even go on a flight like me, for example, you need to understand that this was a day where we felt helpless, knowing that there are several flights still in the air and they could land anywhere, knowing that they are hijacked, knowing that we have bombs of our own flights flying in the sky overhead, and at any given point, they could be landing on you or your loved ones.
There's also the trauma of dealing with the grief of others at such an immense scale. Because even if you weren't directly impacted yourself, you probably knew someone who lost someone. Especially if you lived in the tri-state area like I did. We had an actual grief assembly in my elementary school shortly after the attack. Elementary schoolers should not need to have an assembly about grief. That's not something we should need to experience.
You know, the old saying of those who don't learn from history fail to repeat it. This doesn't fully apply here, but it applies enough. When you have loved ones that you know have been abducted, kidnapped, or otherwise or just disappeared, you have that sense of helplessness. What do you do in that sense of helplessness? You either stay helpless, you look for someone who can help you, or you help yourself. People like Heavy Mettaloid, for example, instead of staying helpless, he chose to take up the call and stand against those that would do us harm. And for which I do say thank you, sir. Appreciate your service, and thank you so much for protecting me and my loved ones.
I appreciate it. It's not funny, but it's like one of those things. Like people are like, oh, like thank you for your service. And like what are you supposed to say to that? And it's usually like, oh, just hey, you're welcome, or hey, like I appreciate it. So just a bit of a tangent. in boot camp, my chief said to say, "Thank you for paying taxes." Um, a little levity.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, our founder, DJ Ark, also took up the call. He is no longer in service, right? He is retired from service, but he did serve during those dark times as well. He's old, but he's not that old. And to tell the truth, I am actually older than Ark, but we just make fun of him because he always acts like an old man. But yes, Ark, I believe he was a ranger, if I remember correctly. He doesn't like to talk about it too much, and I can understand why. The one thing he has told us in the past is that, and this is sort of a tangent from what we're talking about, is that he was stationed in Australia once, and he unfortunately got bit by a rattlesnake, and he had to endure some anti-venom sessions, and he did not have a good time. But yes, Ark, Heavy Mettaloid, and another one who is who's going through her own things right now is Syriana. If you don't know who Syriana is, look back through our Suiting Up for Life episodes, and you can find out a little bit more about her during our Memorial Day Suiting Up for Life episode that we did a few years back. But she also enlisted and took up the oath. Although we were feeling helpless that day, although we lost so many and continue to lose people since then, although we were hurt, damaged, and a lot of us did become divided that day. A lot of us stood together, but a lot of us became divided. There was hate, despair, anger, fear, worry, depression, anxiety. But through all of that, we still had others among us that decided to become the shield for not only the nation but for the world. These planes crashing into these buildings are no different than the bombs and bullets that our shield, our Air Force, our Navy, our Army, our Rangers, our Black Ops, and I know I'm leaving some people out here. Our Marines. Sorry, I knew I was forgetting one. They're all of these people who are there to protect us are always there watching our backs. They can't always protect us from everything, but we live in this country with the feeling of safety. We can go to bed at night knowing that a hostile country isn't going to invade us overnight. There's always the possibility of it, but we have these people out here, these hardworking and loyal and brave men and women that have stepped up and said that not today. Today being 9/11 not only marks the day of this very tragic and horrible event. But it marks the day as where a lot of men and women had a decision to make. Do we remain helpless? Do we find someone who will help? Or do we no longer be helpless? I realize I've been ranting way too long, and neither one of you have had chances to speak, so I apologize.
It's fine.
No
I've
problem.
had planes flying by, and I just mute my mic when that happens.
I just not.
Go ahead.
I was just saying I tend not to say anything about this topic unless I have something to give input on. Just because it's very... There, like I said in the staff chat, there's a lot of trauma around that. So many things changed after that day.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the first times that we all became educated, or a lot of us became educated about things going on overseas. We all started to learn about war and our troops getting sent. Before that, a lot of us had stayed ignorant to it. Granted, being a sophomore in high school, you don't really tend to worry about such things. But by my senior year, I had become far more aware of a lot of
I was
middle.
actually in...
Go ahead.
I was in 4th grade, and it was the beginning of the school year. We hadn't even learned about the wars in the colonies yet. This was the first time I'd had any exposure to terrorism, violence of that nature, war. At 8 years old, that's not stuff you should need to learn in that fashion. And I feel sorry for anyone who lives through that regularly, because there's many countries in the world where war is constant.
Mm-hmm. It's always the innocent that suffer the most. Like, yeah, I mean, children should not be subject to that kind of thing, but it's what always happens. Like, there are always either innocent casualties in war or accidental casualties in war or other things like that. It's not pretty. It's not fair, but it is unfortunately how things often go.
What do you think is worse? Ignoring it entirely, becoming aware of it but making fun of it, or accepting it and making it part of your life and then utilizing it as a guard? Granted,
It depends.
Go ahead.
It depends on the guard. Like, you can see a car crash on television and never decide to drive. That would be a bad kind of guard. Or you can say, okay, maybe I'll not go 80 miles an hour in the 65 zone. Maybe I'll go 70, or I'll go slightly slower than I normally do. I think taking things seriously, understanding them, seeking to understand them in a way that you can either use or bestow said knowledge on to others or otherwise utilize in a way where the intent is to be more aware of it in order to either prevent it or to be prepared for it in case it happens again.
So obviously, being ignorant of it is never going to be healthy.
Correct. A little levity never hurts as long as you understand your audience. Like, I would never make that kind of joke in the presence of someone who was in the tri-state area during that. But I mean, if it's just me and my buddies and something comes up on the feed, I mean, it might get laughed at, but it's not being laughed at as mockery. It's being laughed at because either we understand it and it's just part of our coping mechanism and our I guess dark humor. But yeah, I mean, if you're laughing at it to like make fun of it, or if you're some Alex Jones type, like, oh, like that never happened, that's when it gets bad. I would say that's worse than ignorance, because at least if you're ignorant, you can't hurt anyone else. But if you're being downright mockery or dismissive of these events in a way that is not befitting human dignity, then you're doing yourself and the world a disservice.
Einir, do you have anything to say before I start up again? Okay. So hopefully everyone watching this will understand that this is not a discussion on what happened throughout the entire timeline. This is not a credibility fact seeking, truth telling stream. This is about understanding the it's not levity, the gravity. Yes, it's understanding the gravity of these events. And it's not just about planes crashing into buildings. It's not just about terrorists, hijacking planes. It's about understanding it's about understanding why we are here and what do we do with our lives. You can live in fear, but I think it's better to live in cautiousness. You can live in ignorance, or you can live to be aware. You can live in hatred, or you can live in
empathy.
Thank you. We don't have if you tuned in expecting to hear tales about us being at ground zero and us seeing the towers fall, then you didn't come to the right stream. This is more or less just perspectives of people that either saw it happen through TV monitors and later learned, or those that were closer to it and just lived in the history of what came about from these events. Granted, a lot of us have our own story to tell. A lot of us saw the pictures and the video of the news reports on screen while it was happening. But it all depends on how we've, learned from these events and how it kind of shaped us once we truly understood what it was. There is no conspiracy theories here. I take it as face value as a terrorist attack that led to a lot of tragedy, illness, and trauma. But we also got a lot of brave men and women that saw this as an opportunity to see how well they could protect their loved ones. Granted, since that time, we have lost a lot. We have even had a few people from my very own hometown that never made it home. And others will tell you the same thing. Granted, the ones that are with me now will probably have their own versions of people they will never see again. So, for those of you out there that point at this event and laugh, you have no sympathy from me. You have no respect from me. I can only say that I hope one day you realize the folly of your foolishness. And I really don't have anything else to add to that.
I think, yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to properly phrase it in, but I know that there was a lot of just vile hatred towards anything Middle East after that, but people don't even realize oftentimes that, hey, like, just because you're Islamic doesn't mean like you're that flavor of Islamic. Like, you could be a Sunni, you could be a Shiite, you could be a what is it? I think even like Palestinians are just a totally other sect, and even then, most of these different sects like are not they're not all aligned. Like, just being Islamophobic because one Islamic terrorist ran a plane into a building is like hating every Christian because of the Westboro Baptist Church's slander that they often go about. So I would say, if you take anything away, don't allow yourself to be blinded. Don't I hate to sound like a Jedi, but don't let emotion cloud your judgment. Temporarily, emotion will cloud your judgment. You will be pissed off, but once the fugue of hatred clears, seek to understand so that you can either hate correctly, or if you shouldn't be hating, to not hate at all.
Agreed.
Like I think, and that speaks to, I would say, modern instances as well. Like you have both the Russia-Ukraine conflict, you have the Israel-Palestine conflict or Israel-Gaza conflict, and it's like, oh, I hate all Israelis, I hate all Gazans, I hate all Russians, I hate all Ukrainians. It's like, it's usually not all of them. It's usually only a small group, if any of them at all, that deserve any level of hatred. So I would say, if you're going to hate, seek first to understand.
Exactly. Very well said. I'm happy I brought you on board today.
I'm happy to be here. Now it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I apologize that whenever I bring you on, it's usually never anything pleasant.
Though it's fine. Most of my life has been unpleasant, so
Well,
a little bit of levity.
yeah, but you know,
No, it's fine.
you are definitely the good voice of reason here, and from your own experiences, you have brought a lot of useful information to this discussion, and uh, insights, and just your own emotional experience.
Mhm.
I will say that not long after the attacks, I remember seeing the report of President Bush coming on the television and doing his address after everything had, kind of subsided. All the other flights were still grounded, but I remember that President Bush had made it back to the Capitol, and he did his address, and I remember him speaking of the country standing together as one, and you know, it sounded, it could have easily been written from anybody, and granted, he might have been reading off a teleprompter, but whether he meant it or not, we always have to stand together.
Mhm.
Not just as Americans, but as the world.
Definitely.
Everyone wishes for world peace in one form or another. It's so easy to get divided on even the most trivial of, things, such as, pineapple on pizza, for example. A little bit of levity there.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, granted, I don't want us to do the whole hippie thing, make love, not war. Uh, the way they want to do it is not exactly the way I would want to do it.
Mhm.
But living as a society where we can all live peacefully is something that we could hopefully all look forward to.
Mhm.
I could be negative about this and say that it probably won't happen, but it's not that it's there's nothing wrong with at least wishing for it.
We'll get there eventually. I think. I mean, the world as a whole is trending upwards socially, which is to say, people are living longer, people are having fewer kids, people are there are significantly more people who are not impoverished. Go.
Yep.
but I think we'll survive, and I think that we will eventually reach, like, Star Trek would be ideal, where it's like, oh, everyone's just works for the greater good.
I'm
I think
impressed
we'll
that you
get there
brought
eventually.
Star Trek into this.
I mean, yeah, I think we'll eventually get to that level of, I guess, racial maturity where we're able to see past the face and past the beliefs and understand, hey, this is another human being, um,
Or furry.
or furry.
Yeah. Well, hopefully for everyone that has watched this tonight, hopefully you can take even just the smallest bit from this discussion and learn from it. I know we've kind of dragged on a little bit longer than probably originally intended. But for anybody who's watched this, we appreciate you taking the time to just listen to a couple of older people talking about, you know, something that happened 24 years ago. And, it just hopefully you can learn something from it. If you have to take anything from this stream, the one piece of advice that I would like to give is always remember that for every person that hates you, there's probably 100 people out there that love you. Heavy, any last minute advice?
I would say that even those who hate you probably only do so because they do not understand you. And you could probably add them to the list of those who love you if all that you do is sit down and have a beer with them, or if you're underage, insert drink of your choice.
There you go.
Yeah. Most people don't want to hate. Most people simply do because they either fear or they don't understand.
Exactly. So yeah, hopefully for everyone who has watched this and participated in this, and maybe participating in other streams and just happen to find us in a random click, uh, don't forget this day. Don't forget the significance of this day. You don't have to preach it every single day of your life, but just keep it in a little place in your mind and know what it means for 9/11. And I hope that every single one of you will grow from it, learn from it, and learn to love from it. Any closing statements, Heavy?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Well, folks, we thank you once again for joining on this little place that we like to call the Omega Republic. I have been your host, Coppercat. And of course, my cohort with me today, co-host.
Heavy Mettaloid. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were going to say it or not.
Well, I didn't give you a good enough social cue, so that was kind of my fault. I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
So, yep. You have a good night, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us, and hope you have a good rest of your night. And, you know, if nothing else, if we're going to end this stream, I'm going to say that I do not like pineapple on pizza. Take care, everybody.